Welcome, everyone, to the first of our series of the Moravian Academy Community Education Series this year. My name is Adrianne Finley Odell, and I serve as head of school at Moravian Academy. I am thrilled to be joined tonight with three distinguished panelists, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you in a moment. But our topic tonight is preparing kids for the real world. And last year, our opening Moravian Academy Community Education Series was a similar one, but it was on just skills. And so we're going to start off there tonight a little bit, kind of hit on skills lightly, and then go into some other themes. And if there's time at the end of our conversation, we'll open it up for Q&A. If you have questions along the way, feel free to include them in the chat. And my colleagues, Jess McPherson and Bob Zeiser, will facilitate those at the end of our conversation. But without further ado, I would love for our three panelists, Nicole Hurd, Jennifer Mermel, and JB Reilly, to introduce themselves. Nicole, would you like to start?
Thank you, Adrianne. Good evening, everybody. I'm so excited. I think the last time I was with this community was when you were inaugurated. So it's great to see you all again. And I see some familiar names. So thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Hurd. I have the complete honor of being Lafayette College's 18th president. So I am here on College Hill, and it is a place that's going through some incredibly exciting moments. We're about to have a bicentennial. We're going to have our big 200th in the 25-26 academic year. We just had our women's field hockey team win a Patriot League championship. One of my fellow trustees is on this call, JB Reilly, and we're doing a lot of work around a strategic plan and a master plan. We just had a board call. But this is always about the future and how we lift up young people. So I'm very excited to have time with you tonight to talk about skills and young people and empowering and unlocking potential. And always grateful to be in this community. So thank you for inviting me tonight.
Well, thank you, President Hurd. And next up, Jennifer Mermel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Mermel. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at BTIG. We're a financial services company located in Midtown Manhattan, and our CEO is a parent in the Moravian community. So that's how I was lucky enough to join everyone this evening. I'm also a parent of a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I look forward to getting to know all of you and hearing about your questions. And I really appreciate the invitation. Thanks for including me.
Thank you. So glad to have you with us. Thank you, Jennifer. And then JB Reilly.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's JB Reilly. Have a business in the Lehigh Valley called City Center Group. We're a real estate development company that's, I'll say, vertically integrated, where we do design, building, finance, management, etc. My wife and I, we have three children. Two of them graduates of Moravian Academy. Two of them went on to graduate from Lafayette College, and I've been a trustee at Lafayette for about 17 years. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and looking forward to listening and learning and participating.
Well, thank you, JB. And for everyone tuning in, we are really fortunate tonight to have these three very diverse perspectives to our conversation tonight, perspectives both from higher ed and from two very different sectors in business. And, as we think about the work that we are doing to prepare young people for what's next, whether it's going on to higher ed, then higher ed, onto the workplace, our panelists here are uniquely suited to share with us their thoughts of what they're seeing as young people are coming to them today, what they might be missing in terms of some of those skills, and what they value most in terms of the skills that young people need to really be as successful as possible in their realms. So with that, I'd love to start things off kind of picking up where we left off last year related to skills. And I'd love any of our panelists to share their thoughts about what skills do you see as the most important for for you and your business, or for, getting into college, for example, and doing well, to thrive. Nicole, would you like to start us off?
Happy to. And again, I apologize. I'm fighting a bit of a head cold. I would say curiosity is always high on the list, right? I think about we're about to go into our admission cycle with our early decision one deadline. We'll go into another early decision deadline. We'll go into regular decisions. So lots of essays being written right now. I'm sure those of you who have students in the senior class, you understand that anxiety. And when I think about that process in particular, I think the students that thrive when they get to a campus like Lafayette's are the ones that actually are willing to be curious, willing to say, this is what I think I might be interested in, but I'm willing to go and get uncomfortable. And so, when I think about a campus like this, the talent is actually everywhere, right? So I think about how do we develop our student talent. I also think about how do we develop our faculty and staff talent. And I'd say what's common in all three of those groups is that sense of curiosity, right? Whether you're 18 or you're 28 or you're 48 or you're 68, there's something really empowering about people who are curious. And so, we just, as you know, went through a national election, and I spent most of the day on the line because we actually voted on campus for the first time here. And the line was 3 hours and 45 minutes. My husband and I both stood in it to vote ourselves. But it was really interesting. Obviously, just like Moravian Academy, we are not teaching students who to vote for or what to think. We're teaching them to think, right? We're teaching them to be curious. And what I loved about being out there from 11 to 6 that day was people were not coming with any kind of preconceived ideas that this was going to be a stressful environment. They came with really great conversation and curiosity. It's what I love about our students, right? They came with this sense of wonder. What does it mean to actually think about our democracy? What does it mean to actually think about how we do dialogue across difference? And so my answer for you right now, and I think it'd be my answer even if we weren't in such a divisive world right now, curiosity always serves people well. And so again, whether I'm reading a student essay or I'm talking to a prospective parent, or I'm talking to somebody who's thinking about joining us as a staff member or faculty member, I think if there's curiosity there, that's always a really good sign that somebody's going to learn and grow with us.
Well, thank you, Nicole. And this is so unprompted, but that's one of our core values at Moravian Academy. So so well aligned with what we believe as well. If you can stay curious, then it leaves you open to the possibilities and also learning from others versus shutting things down. That open perspective to learn more. So let's shift gears. Jen, do you have some thoughts there?
Curiosity is actually my number one answer when I'm asked this question. So I was really happy to hear Nicole expound on that, because just fundamentally, right? That's where you have to start. If you're not interested in what you're doing, in learning and in building on that, you're not going to go anywhere. And so, time and time again, that's what we lead with when we interview people who, and again, at every stage of the game when they want to join BTIG. But I think right behind that, the people that are most successful in our organization are people who realize that they don't succeed in a vacuum. You really have to understand that you are, even if you're an individual performer, such as a salesperson, you operate as part of a team. And you operate as part of a larger organization. And you have to look around and realize, take into account what else is going on in this organization. It's not always about you. And I find, especially with young people, that can be really a difficult transition. They come in, they want feedback day 2. It's like they haven't even learned, exactly the floor plan of the office, and they want feedback. And it's like, take a breath, listen, ask questions, be curious. Digest a little bit, and then we can work on feedback. But really helping people, and I think this also ties into the conversations we've seen lately around technology and loneliness, right? Like, if this isn't just all intake or self-generated, you have to understand where you fit in the broader organization, what your contributions mean, why you're there, what's your purpose, and then build on that.
That's terrific. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Jennifer. I appreciate it. JB, what are your thoughts?
Well, we have a business where where we have engineers, architects, marketing people, finance people, and it's not a huge business, but let's say we have 50 people that are working in in our development company and the related management companies that we have, and it's a very collaborative environment, and we have a lot of young people. A lot of young people in the organization, and so their ability to work together, to communicate, obviously they need to be interested in what they're doing. They need to be curious, and they need to want to grow. But it's really fundamental that they have good communication skills and that they're used to working with each other. And one of the things that I see way too much is that very rarely do we find young people with good writing skills. To be able to express themselves not only verbally but in a written way. If you're going to convey an idea, if you're going to work together, solve problems, you need to be able to express yourselves. And I think places like Moravian and frankly Lafayette College, and where you have a very individualized learning environment, I think draws those kinds of skills out or develops those skills. So those are definitely things that we look at.
Terrific. So I'm going to shift into thinking about the workplace itself. And it is such a changing environment these days with how much automation there is, with how AI is infiltrating every aspect of our lives and also in the workplace. And so I'm curious from anyone who would like to jump in with their thoughts on this in terms of how schools can better prepare kids for a workplace where many of the jobs may be automated or drastically changed.
I could take a stab at that. And I again, tying into what JB just said, that ability to communicate. Automation and AI is going to be a phenomenal tool for critical thinkers, but you have to be a critical thinker, right? And it's nothing to fear if you are a critical thinker, because then you can deploy it to your best advantage and it will make you more productive. And so I think, students that come again with an openness to learn and who are able to look at problems and ask good questions, that's how they're going to be able to leverage these new tools. We as a firm don't see it as a threat. We see them as a way to enhance productivity and to eliminate some of the more routine tasks that people complain about. People don't want to do rote work. And so it's a great way in many instances to get rid of some of that rote work and to free people up for higher level thinking. Again, I work in finance and it's very metric driven. So, it may be perceived very differently in a creative environment, but for us, we really see it as something that's going to enhance our productivity, not something that's a threat.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Any other thoughts?
I think it's so early, in terms of our experience, it hasn't, we're not seeing a lot of direct impact, but it is coming. But I think that, we do a lot of unique stuff, and and I think that I think we're always challenging each other to think out of the box, and I think that's that's maybe what all of us, all our employees want their people to be. They want to be self-motivated, but they want to be self-starting. They want to think out of the box and not looking for an easy way out. And so, I think it's still very much from our standpoint kind of developing. But I think that it's really important for these young people to have confidence, though, in themselves coming out of school and being able to take chances and offer ideas and take risks, in the workplace environment. So those are kinds of, that's kind of our environment, at least.
Thank you, JB. I'm going to switch back over to President Hurd. Relatedly to this, in terms of the school environment, how can we foster that teamwork, the leadership and problem-solving skills, either at the K-12 level or the higher ed level, because these are important skills that they're going to need.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and this goes to the way we teach. It also goes to the way that we do extracurricular and co-curricular activities, though, right? I think we sometimes underestimate how important experiential learning is. It's really important for our students to understand that life is a team sport. There are very few careers and there are very few places in life where it's not a team sport. And so I think about on this campus, our student athletes. I think about the folks that are on teams. There's some students that work with JB and do some real estate lab work. There's students that do debate together. There's students that are studying abroad together. There's, whether it's in our engineering division or in the humanities, there's a lot of group work. That work is really important. There are very few times in life where you can do things by yourself. And I think we forget to tease that out. Life is very much a team sport. And so the ability to listen well, the ability to be empathetic, back to the curiosity, the ability to dialogue across difference and not just assume, to be able to really say, what am I seeing here? And are we actually aligned? And if we aren't aligned, what are the skills we need to get aligned? But I really am struck by how much our students are better off when they've been in those team environments, right? So again, whether it's in the classroom and it's academic experience, or whether it's a group that goes and studies abroad together, or whether it's a group that's working, to accomplish something on the court or a field, or it's really important that they have those moments. Like I said, part of being the best version of yourself is also being the best version of yourself around other people. And so I really do think there's something really striking about making sure our students are in these cooperative environments. It's not enough in life to just be able to achieve by yourself. You have to be able to achieve, right? You have to be able to strike a vision, but you also have to ask other people to participate in that vision. And if you can't get people to participate in the vision, if you can't do the work together, you're not going to have the kind of career or the kind of relationships that I think we want our students to have. So.
Great. I want to build on something you said there. I'm thinking about those real world experiences. How can schools and businesses partner in greater ways to provide these real world experiences for young people?
Well, we're about to launch a strategic plan, and so I can tell you a part of it is actually going deeper into the Lehigh Valley and going deeper into this immersive space, going deeper into internships. Again, this idea that applied learning, experiential learning it's actually core. I think there was a time, those of us who went to college decades ago, where these things were kind of nice to have or extra, and they seemed like they were add-ons. I would argue they're no longer add-ons. The idea that you would spend time in high school or time in college and never go work with an employer, never work on a group project, never be immersive. I mean, I really think about, especially here in the Lehigh Valley. So this is true for Lafayette and it's true for Moravian Academy. They're amazing businesses in the Lehigh Valley. Whether it's in the for-profit sector or the nonprofit sector, there are places where our students can get really great experiences, really great mentoring. But if we don't hold that up as core and it's just as extra, we're really missing the boat. There's something about that immersive experience. There's something about internships that aren't about checking boxes for a college application or checking boxes for a resume, but actually doing the immersive work and then coming back and having conversations about what you learned from the immersive work and what were the lessons learned and presenting that. So you also get the presentation skills, but it's not just about having these isolated kind of field trip moments. It's about having these incredibly immersive, thoughtful moments that have deliverables and have reflection points in them so the learning really happens. But I do think we're blessed to be here in the Lehigh Valley where we can really do that work with some incredible partners.
That's terrific.
I think,
sorry,
I did have something to say. I think it's also important on the school side to manage the students' expectations, right? It is work. And I think sometimes we run an intern program, and sometimes students come in with an expectation that it's going to be, like a Disney World ride. Like everything is going to be great. They're going to have a closet full of new clothes. They're going to go out to lunch. They're going to have a desk, but then at the end of the day, there is there's a learning curve, right? You don't come in an expert. We don't expect them to come in as experts. And coming in, not just with a curiosity, but with an openness to learn. You were using some words earlier about that, like having like an aptitude, to take things in and really be able to walk away and digest something later. That's the point of the internship, right? It's not just to like dress up and have your dream job for 6 weeks or whatever it is. I think that would help for the students to have a more beneficial experience, because too often I see them leaving a little bit disappointed, but they're just not disappointed on the things that I would hope they were focused on when they were there, and again, they have to realize that they're stepping into an organization that's going to continue. It was there before they came. It will continue after they left. And even though we are happy to have them, eager to have them, because frankly, as an intern host, we're looking for future employees, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to prioritize their experience every moment of the day. Like sometimes will be less exciting than other times. And that's the nature of work, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, it's not always the glamour, right?
No.
Like,
but you will get there. You will get there. You'll have your moments.
You got to do the work. You got to pay the price.
Is right. I mean, especially if you want to sit in your seat or Nicole's seat, right? Like it's not like you didn't just get like put there. I mean, it's a journey.
It is a journey. JB, what do you see?
Well, just to pick up on Nicole's comments, I mean, I think that the Lehigh Valley is a very, great environment for these kind of internship opportunities. I grew up in the Lehigh Valley, been here my entire professional career, and almost without exception, the companies in the Lehigh Valley are very engaged in just say the internship world. And I mean, we have 3 or 4 or 5 interns here during the summer, and so figuring out a way to have kind of real programs. And I know coming out of high school, students are a little young, but certainly once they get into college, I think these having meaningful internship programs are important. And I think that like as Nicole said at Lafayette, we're working on trying to kind of really expand those kinds of opportunities for our students. And to Jennifer's point, it's from an employer standpoint, it's really hard to host interns because you've got to figure out how you're going to make their experience meaningful, and it's not going to be exciting every minute that they're there. And so managing expectations and is important. But I think it's pretty invaluable. It's not, maybe not, what they experience, every time somebody has another experience, they're growing. And so, the more experiences I think you can offer your students, the better.
Yeah. Building on that, we have a question from one of our attendees, Jenna Henry. She says, do you think having shadow programs for younger students would be beneficial and something local business would be interested in?
We do that all the time. And I think that's the shorter things are half a day, maybe a couple days. And I think especially for somebody that's in high school, that's just trying to just kind of understand, what they're interested in and just what the real world kind of looks like. And I think that companies a lot of companies are even more willing to do that because it's an easy thing to do. It's an easier thing to do.
That's great. And Jenna, I'm not sure if you're aware or anybody else on the call is aware. At Moravian Academy, we have a program called post-term. Once our seniors finish their APs and before they graduate, they have 2 weeks where they're doing basically that, internships, going in and experiencing, what it's like to be in the workplace. And then they come back and they share out and report out. And I've sat in on those report outs, and the amount of growth and learning from these students is really phenomenal. And for some of them, what they learn is, I'm really interested in this. I would like to learn more, potentially pursue this in college. For other ones, it's like, I learned that I have no interest in this. I thought I was interested and I don't want to pursue that. So I think those kinds of experiences when you are a high school student before you go off to college, whether it is a part-time job, maybe a job that you do in the summer if you can get one, or this kind of post-term that we have crafted when seniors have finished their regular coursework is a real great add to their learning and growing. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. I'd like to hear the advice of any of our panelists of how parents can encourage real world responsibility in ways that set their young people up for success.
I'll jump in there. I'm a big fan of summer jobs. I think that, any experience that kids can get that's not that involves being responsible to an adult who's not in your family is a really valuable experience, right? Because we all have our own dynamic with our families. But when you go out and you work for somebody else and you see how somebody else thinks, how they manage people, how they talk to people, again, you may like it, you may not like it, but I think that that's a really, really invaluable experience. And when you think about the building blocks to get there, I think it goes back again to the things we were talking about earlier, right? They have to be able to communicate. They need to know before they start that job to look people in the eye, to shake hands, right? To be respectful. They have to be curious. They won't have to want to learn whatever the job is at hand. And they have to really jump in and be part of the team and to look around and say where, even if somebody isn't telling me to do something, is there something I can do here? Can I stack those papers over there? Can I wipe this counter down? Whatever small thing they might think it is, if they can add, something to the work experience without being told what to do, that's just amazing.
I love that you talked about shaking someone's hand because we have a practice at our historic downtown campus where we're shaking the hands of every kid as they're going into the building. It's been a practice that has been going on for many years. It kind of went by the wayside during COVID, as we would imagine, but then we brought it back. And when I have done that, if the young person isn't looking me in the eye, I actually say to them, I want to see your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often young people, they might go through the motions of shaking a hand and it's maybe not a strong handshake or they don't meet your eyes. And when you practice that skill again and again and again, it just becomes what you do. And it sets you apart when you are going for those job interviews, when you're going to apply to college and you're having the interview. It makes a real difference.
It really does. And even with my 16-year-old, I have a 16-year-old son with people that he's familiar with who he may not shake their hand every time he see them. I still continually prompt him, eyes, like you don't just say hello, eyes, you have to look. But it does, it makes a world of difference. And even adults don't do it. I mean, people, especially with the phones, right? Everybody is looking at their phone. So.
Yeah. Good old fashioned shake someone's hand, look them in the eyes.
I remember our son, Jack, our youngest, he's 28 now. When he just graduated from Moravian and he had a summer job at Victaulic and he was working in the foundry and he had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. And my wife and I were like, man, is he going to be able to do this? And like the first couple of days we're like, checking, looking down the hallway, is he getting up on time? And I'll tell you what, that was a transformative experience for him. And in an 8-week period, it was really remarkable. Being accountable, as Jennifer says, to somebody else, somebody outside your family, and having those experiences. And so certainly, encourage, summer work, part-time work, whatever. But the other thing that I've found, like, and our kids now are 28, 30, and 32, and they're all doing reasonably well. They emulate they emulate you, and you don't realize they're hearing you or listening to until many years later. And the traits that they pick up are the traits that they see every day at home. And I think that is the biggest influence a parent has in developing their kids is just their, daily interaction and we just kind of see it, have just seen it over the years.
Yeah, I just compliment what JB and Jennifer are saying in terms of summer jobs and what they're learning from, shaking hands and emulating what they see at home. I would say one of my passion items, especially when I'm talking to parents of high school students and younger students, it's financial literacy. I know it's really uncomfortable to talk about money. I know most of us don't want to talk about money. I think a lot of us were actually raised in households where you did not talk about money. We do our students a gigantic disservice. It's amazing to me how many students don't know the difference between a loan and a grant, right? They don't know. Maybe they don't need financial aid. Maybe they come from a family that's got the resources to pay for college, but then they don't understand when they get a first credit card what the interest rate means. It is so painless to swipe your credit card, or now you're not even doing that. You're just putting your phone up to the we all have Apple Pay or whatever it is. The idea that we don't understand interest rates, that we don't understand grants versus loans, that we don't understand what it means to be financially literate is really problematic. And it's problematic for all of our students. I have seen, not just on Lafayette's campus, I was at UNC Chapel Hill for a number of years. I was at the University of Virginia for a number of years. All sorts of students from all sorts of backgrounds really tripping up when they are financially independent for the first time and not understanding what things cost, how to navigate the world. There's really some seriously, I've watched students make really bad decisions because they've got their first credit card, or they're trying to keep up with a group of friends, or they don't understand how this all is going to work. And so we do a disservice to our students when we don't talk to our children, when we don't talk to them about money. And again, I know for a lot of us, it's not the most comfortable thing to talk about. But the first time your child, and I've gone through this now, has to pay rent, right? The first time your child is balancing, they don't balance checkbooks the way that we used to. But the first time they really do those household things, if they haven't seen you do that, if you haven't talked them through that, if you haven't given them that muscle, it is a much harder transition than if you do. So again, I know I'm asking you all to be a little uncomfortable, but I can tell you I have a daughter who's now in graduate school and a son who's a senior in college. And watching them and making sure they understand that Venmo is not magic money, that all of this actually comes at a cost, to understand the value of money. Some of you might look, Melody Hobson, who's absolutely amazing, a woman. She was very involved in the nonprofit I ran before I got here at the College of Advising Corps. She just put a book out on financial literacy for young people. I think it's actually on Oprah's must-have holiday list. Go buy Melody's book if you're uncomfortable, and use that to start the conversation. But I really do think financial literacy is something that we need to get more comfortable with, because knowledge is power. And when you don't have knowledge, it's amazing the mistakes I've seen young people make with credit cards or Venmo, or not understanding the difference between taking out a loan or taking out a grant.
I'd like to build on that for just real quick. That is such a good point, Nicole, right? And I call it the process of adulting. The other thing is what I've come to realize, having worked with a lot of young people, how important it is to take your kids off your apps. I hear them. They're like, oh, I'm still on my parents' Amazon. I'm still on my parents' Uber. And again, they come from all different types of families. These are not just wealthy kids. And I can appreciate, as a parent, having that transparency. It's nice to know where my kids are going. It's nice to know what my kids are buying. But by the time that they're in high school, they need to be making those decisions and managing those decisions on their own. It's awkward when you have a 26-year-old talking about spending money on their parents' Netflix account. It's time to grow up. So think about those things too.
Well, I've also heard stories of, and I'm curious if this has happened to you, JB or Jen, and Nicole, I'm sure it's happened at Lafayette, where there is the inability to disconnect from a parent. So, there's stories of parents calling and advocating for their child's grades when they're in college, or calling their child's boss and advocating for them for a raise or a promotion. We really do need the disconnection of the parents from their young people, so that they can really grow and make those own decisions and thrive. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears to the topic of mental and emotional preparedness. This is actually not that far away from what I was just talking about. They need to have that disconnect from parents and become adults. But how can we support our young people in building mental resilience to be able to handle challenges and setbacks? I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
That's a hard one. That's like one that I'd love to hear your opinion. It's very, very hard.
I'll say something that sounds like it's a platitude or that I'm just saying this and I don't mean it. I actually mean it. You have to normalize that it's okay to fail. You have to normalize that it's not always going to be perfect. I do think all of us want to be our best. We want to have our children see us succeed. We want to succeed. There's so much pressure to be perfect. There's so much pressure to be high achieving, right? And I do think we have to normalize that all of us have moments, right? Like nobody lives a linear life. I say this to our students all the time. There's so much pressure to have this linear life, right? It's, a great high school career, right? With no grades that aren't A's. Can I tell you, there's another one that drives me crazy. When students come up to me and say, I think I'm going to drop a class because I'm getting a B. And I'm thinking, you cannot drop a class because you're getting a B. That's not a reason to drop a class. Life is full of B's. And by the way, it's full of C's and other things too. Like it's not healthy. You're not being resilient if you're dropping a class because you're getting a B, right? And so this idea that we have these perfectly linear lives, that you go to a great high school and then you go to a great college and then it's a great first job and then you meet your perfect partner and then it's your, next. None of us on this call have had a linear life. It just doesn't exist. Life is much more up and down and interesting and full of heartbreak and success and love and all sorts of goodness. And we cannot be messaging to our students that somehow that linear life is the norm. And so, we all make mistakes. We all fall down. We all have to get up. And again, I think, there's a real beauty in trying to, and again, I know it's so much harder to do it than it is to say it, but to be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, that didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to, and it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. I actually think about all the things in my life that I'm really proud of. And I think to myself, there was risk there. That might not have worked out. And that's okay. And the times where I think about, well, it didn't work out, I learned a ton from when it didn't work out, right? And so again, I just think we've got to be vulnerable, that none of us have a perfect story, and that the sense that it's all high achievement or it's all A's. Like I said, I'm being really vulnerable with all of you by sharing that. We have students on this campus who are afraid to get B's and C's. That's not okay. That's not okay. That's not life. And so really making sure that we normalize that part of the journey is the falls. And if you don't have the falls and you don't know how to get back up, the journey is not going to be nearly as interesting or sweet or rewarding. So,
yeah. I think too, for parents, modeling that themselves, right? That like being really open to say, here's something that I messed up, and here's what I learned from it. And I want you to know that you're going to have many times in your life where you're going to mess up. This year, next month, it's going to happen. And what's important is to learn from that and grow from that. In fact, that builds that resilience muscle, doing it again and again and again. And you see it all the time on the sports field. That's why I think it's great for young people to participate in some sort of sports, because part of the growth and learning is through that failure, right? You figure out how to do it better the next time. Same with the arts. Like, you're going to stumble, like if you're singing on stage, or you're playing an instrument, or you're performing, that's actually part of the growth process.
And with our kids and even some of our young employees, I try to always stress that when you've prepared and you've tried your best, you should accept the result. And the result may not always be the result you want, but you should be satisfied that, you know, you gave it your all and you prepared. On the other hand, if you didn't prepare and you didn't put the effort in, you don't deserve to, you may not deserve the result that you wanted. And so, maybe be less sympathetic in those situations, um, I think that it's a balancing act, obviously. But I think, you want to get even, whether it's young employees for me or, my children that are now grown, you want to encourage them to go into situations that are uncomfortable, whether it's traveling abroad. And, I see some, I saw like a family member do this where their kid was traveling abroad and they went to London to take the kid to London. And it was like, you just defeated the purpose of the whole experience. Let your child explore and feel some uncomfortableness, because they're going to grow and they're going to be better and they're going to be resilient, and I think, maybe some of the mental issues that we're dealing with might be mitigated. So looking for those little opportunities, I think are important.
Thank you,
I
Jamie.
think, Adrian, also, you talked earlier about how parents sometimes insert themselves on behalf of their children. That too, you're robbing them, right? Every conversation they can have with a teacher or a coach, I feel like those are very low impact ways to build resilience, right? It is still uncomfortable for them. They have to advocate for themselves. They're going to be dealing with somebody who doesn't communicate the same way as their parents do with them. And they'll gain their footing and they'll get better. And again, to JB's point, the outcome may be not what they want, but they'll know for the next time, maybe to reevaluate the strategy or to get in a different situation from the onset so that they're positioned differently.
Terrific. Some really awesome thoughts there. Let's talk a little bit about lifelong learning and adaptability. How can we encourage kids to explore their passions while also preparing them for a variety of career options? Any thoughts there?
I do, I think that everybody, not just children, have to pursue their passions concurrent with their career. First of all, you should be passionate about your career, right? We should all be doing something that we love, because life is long. And if you're going to get out of bed and do this job every day, you need to care about it. But that doesn't mean if I'm in finance, I can't also be a painter on the side, or maybe a horseback rider or a tennis player, whatever it is. You have to have that balance for outlet and joy. And so it shouldn't be an either or. It should be a, how do I prioritize, and to understand that that's always, the sands are always shifting, right? And so today, maybe I've got to really focus on work, and tennis has to wait until Saturday, right? Or, on Saturday, I need that time to regroup mentally, and I'm not going to look at my email for 4 hours. Modeling, I think, is tremendous, but it should never be binary. It should not be, do I have to do this or do I have to do that?
Thank you. Any other thoughts there?
I just reinforce what we said before about curiosity. I think every single one of us needs to be a lifelong learner, right? So you can't stop picking up the books. You can't stop, this generation loves to their podcasts and all sorts of different ways. And I actually am okay with that. I'm okay if the learning is coming through your ears as opposed through your eyes, but it's just the constant refreshing, right? And again, I think as adults, those of us that have a passion for our careers means that we keep learning, right? You don't just do this and then say, okay, I've got it. And that's the other thing you have to break with students, right? Is this perception that you get to that level and then you just have it. You don't go up and then just plateau. You actually keep climbing, right? Throughout your whole life. And so, it's funny. This kind of answers the last two questions in one. This summer I was actually Adrian, if we could ever do this for your students, I'd love to find a place where we could do this in the area. But I went to a concert for the first time, and it wasn't a concert that was done. It was actually a practice. So it was a rehearsal, and it was Yo-Yo Ma, which, it's Yo-Yo Ma, how amazing. But it was Yo-Yo Ma during practice. And so they stopped, and he missed notes, and he took notes. and he coached other people and people coached him. And my mind was blown because it's Yo-Yo Ma. And so many times in life, we just see the final product, right? To your point before, you don't see the rehearsal, you don't see the practice. And I think we have to remind ourselves, like, Yo-Yo Ma practices all the time. You just see the concert, right? All of us need to practice all the time. All of us need to rehearse all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's back to your sports analogy. A great baseball player is batting what, in the 300s? Like, that means they're striking out a whole lot. And so again, getting comfortable with this constant learning and growing. But I will tell you, it was one of the most powerful experiences I had was actually going to this concert, not because it was the final product, but watching these incredible musicians doing the rehearsing and watching the joy, to Jennifer's point, as they were rehearsing and co-creating together and making mistakes together and doing it together. It was actually a really breathtaking experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to add, about, growing, and I, meet, a lot of young people that they'll come in for, can I, have some career advice? Can I, can we shadow you? Can we talk about, whatever? And, the first job out of college is, probably not a job that you may like, but, you're kind of building your skills based on experiences and learning what you like, what you don't like, what you're passionate about. And, when I look at my own career, how all of our careers have evolved. What you're doing today wasn't what you probably thought you were going to do when you first came out of college. And so getting young people in their mindset that, they're not going to get their ultimate job the first job that they have, and so I think creating expectations that you're going to grow, you're going to learn, and you need to kind of continue to push yourself, and your career is going to evolve, your life is going to evolve. I think is important for people to have that understanding, because chances are your first job isn't a job you're probably going to like, but get yourself into a position where you're going to, grow and learn and evolve into wherever that takes you.
That's great to hear. We've been talking a lot about kind of the practical experience. For Nicole and I, we've got schools we're running and kids are focused on getting the grade. Like, they want to have those top grades and, a lot of pressure for those GPAs at a certain level, but also we're talking here about all this practical experience. I'm curious for Jen and JB in particular, how much do you focus when you're hiring? How much do you focus on what their GPA was in college versus their experience that they've brought to the table?
For somebody who has a few years experience, zero. Like, it's zero. Like, once you're out of school, we don't look at that at all. It is a factor for intern applications. Like, I will say that's where, and that's just because there's such a high volume of applications. There has to be certain things that we just, make a cut. But other than that, and for interns, we're like, I still can't get my head around this. You can get a 4 point something, right? Like that's our cutoff is not 4 point something. Like, our cutoff, first of all, fluctuates with the pool. And generally it's above a 3, but if somebody is really passionate about finance, and you do see those kids from time to time, they're president of the stock market club and they've read every book out there, and, they can really write a compelling note or some kind of hook to get somebody's attention, that can completely mitigate a GPA. And that's, that doesn't happen all the time, but it happens from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of times young people that we've hired, they've been interns with us, and we don't hire every intern. So their grades, don't have a huge impact on our hiring process. Probably one of my best hires I ever made was I had a guy call me up. He graduated from Moravian College, and he was doing some small real estate, small investing, and he called me up and he just wanted to come in and basically work for free. And he sat down and I had the interview with him and he said, he goes, I just want to learn. He goes, that's all I want to do. And I said, well, we don't really have an opening. And then like the next week, somebody left the company. And so I called the guy back up and he came in, and I hired him. And I knew he wasn't going to be there with me long, but he was with us maybe about 3 years. He's been now out on his own for 3 years, and he's now got like 2,000 apartments. I mean, just incredible. I have no idea what his GPA was. It was his passion, his perseverance, his drive, his curiosity. Those were the attributes that were impressive.
That's a great story. I love that. In our final segment for tonight, I want to talk a little bit about collaboration between parents, schools, and businesses. What advice do you have for parents on what they can do to bridge gaps that schools or businesses might leave?
Well, I think JB's advice that, your children are watching is absolutely spot on, right? So I think, back to that financial literacy piece, I think we need to be comfortable talking to our children about everything we've talked about tonight, right? About how we all fail. We all make mistakes. We all have to apologize. We all have to think about how to be our best selves, and we all have to make hard decisions, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with actually sharing a lot of that with your children as they get older, so that they have something as a baseline and they're not just trying to figure this out without a baseline, if that makes sense. Again, it's really interesting being on a campus with 2,700 students and then having kids in the same age bracket. This is a generation of students that does so much on their phones, that learn so much by kind of watching others. And that watching can either be really powerful or it can be really bad advice. And so I do think making sure that you have some of these hard conversations with your students, making sure you model things for them is really important because they are watching. And like I said, I've watched students who really, you'd be surprised that nobody's ever talked to them about some of these decisions they're making. And so again, whether it's dropping a class because you're getting a B or not understanding that your Venmo is not magic money, these things really trip people up. And so I do think as parents, we have to step up and have those conversations with our students.
That's great advice.
I think it's also, it's important to encourage your children to be involved with some kind of community service. I mean, no matter where you are in life, there are people that are less fortunate than you, and it may be from a health perspective, it may be from a monetary perspective, it might be from an educational perspective. But when kids go out and develop an awareness of the world that is broader than themselves, again, like it just informs everything that they do in the future. And I think it ties into what Nicole was saying earlier about empirical experiences, right? Like you need to know that the world is bigger than your immediate community. And those experiences are invaluable and can really inform, not only their future decisions, but just the way that they compose themselves and the things that they take for granted.
Super.
I mean, we've always encouraged our children, and I encourage our young employees, to really like show up, kind of show up in life, show up and be involved. Don't sit in the back row of the class. If you go to an event, meet people, show up, whatever you're doing, try to be participating. And I think that's just like, it's just a very, very easy, basic thing is to just show up show up for your spouse, show up for your family, show up for your work, for your colleagues, but whatever you're doing in life, go prepared, engage, and don't waste your time.
That is awesome advice. I love that. Show up. Like that's half the battle, isn't it? Like just
right.
Show up, be there, be present, be engaged, like shake the hand, look them in the eye,
Right.
all of those things. I have one final question, and then we'll open it up for any questions from the attendees. If anybody has a question they want to put in the chat before we finish, go ahead and do that. But what are some realistic steps for parents, educators, and businesses to take to ensure well-rounded preparedness of our young people?
I think it starts with the basics. I think Nicole's points on financial literacy, right? Like that is number one. That was so well said, Nicole, and something I think that we take for granted that we shouldn't. I think that's really fundamentally important, along with basic etiquette, like we were talking about, not just the shaking of the hands, but not mumbling, not putting your phone down. God, put the phone down, put it in your pocket, turn it off. Like, do not go to an interview with your phone. Like just whatever it takes. Like, don't be present, show up, like JB said. But are you asking in terms of a collaborative effort? I think it's hard to build those bridges out of the gate. But I'd be interested to hear what other people thought about that.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit tonight. I'm just a big believer in experiential learning, right? You need to apply what you learn in the classroom out in the world. So I think anytime, and again, Lehigh Valley is just full of opportunities. Anytime you can get our students to think about what they're learning in the classroom and applying it. So again, we've talked about internships tonight and shadowing. But back to the point around volunteering, right? And community service, there are all sorts of ways, to JB's point, there's all sorts of ways to show up. I'd actually give a friendly amendment. I think it's more than half. I think it's 90% of life. I think a huge piece of life is showing up. And I think we underestimate how important it is to show up. So, I would say both as a parent and as an educator, if you're trying to spark, I say this all the time, our students are, they're sparks, and if we do this well, they ignite into fireworks, right? But you have to help them see the potential. You have to see that curiosity. You have to give them that. And so I think businesses and educators are ways to students to ignite, right? But you have to get them out there. You have to get them exposure. You have to show up. And so I do think the Lehigh Valley, we are really, really blessed that our students here can actually become fireworks.
I just would add, in terms of, balance, and again, I've been in the Lehigh Valley my whole life, and, I've worked in the Valley. I've built lots of friendships. I've had a lot of fun at stuff. And, when I think like through my business career, all the relationships that I've made over the years, friendships, it's just like opened so many doors for me in every single way. And it's in a lot of it was around fun. A lot of it was around work. A lot of it was around philanthropic activities. And I think that, just putting yourself all in on whatever you're doing will kind of give you that balance. It wasn't all work. I don't think my success is because I was a workaholic and all I did was work all the time. It was because there was some balance, and the relationships that you really develop, are things that generally come out of, more social settings. So balance is important. And it seems like young people nowadays are, especially a lot of the kids that go to places like Moravian. My kids went to Moravian. It's you've got high achieving, a lot of expectations, but as a parent, you've got to, try to make sure that, there's a balance in how they're living their life and approaching life.
I loved how you talk about having fun while also working or volunteering. And some of the students at Moravian Academy that I see are the most successful are ones where they're engaging with their friends in some particular pursuit. We already talked about athletics, but DECA is a huge thing at Moravian, and so many students will pair up to do projects with DECA, for example. and they see great success, and they're having a blast.
Right.
And the other thing I would say in terms of the partnerships is we have an amazing community of people that have connections that are willing to help, and many, many years of alumni who, like when you graduate from Moravian Academy, your diploma is your passport wherever you go. If you meet a fellow alum, they're going to want to help you because you had this very unique shared experience at a place like Moravian Academy, where you will maybe over 20 or more year time span, you might have had some of the same teachers. So it's a great opportunity to really leverage that. And also for parents, again, encourage your students to make those connections, to pursue those passions, to have fun while doing it. Get the experiential education as part of it, as well as Dr. Hurd talked about earlier. This has been a wide-ranging conversation, and I really want to thank everybody who joined us tonight and our panelists. How fortunate we were to have such great expertise in the room tonight, and expertise right here in the Valley that is available in our community. So thanks everybody for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your week.